Cool. Hello, folks. Welcome back to like I can say, this is the last session of our series on Hacktoberfest. I hope so. You got something great insight regarding the previous session and on how you can contribute on different projects. And I hope so. You are not doing any spamming in during Hacktoberfest. You're doing quality contribution. You're adding some value to the projects. In today's session, I'm bringing one of my mentor during GSoC period, that is Shivay Lamba. So let's bring Shivay on the stage. Yep.
Hi,
Hi, Shivay.
Karthikeyan. Hi, everyone who
Hi,
is tuning
Shivay.
in live. Hi, finally, Karthike has brought me to his channel and to his community. I was like so eager that when will Karthike invite me, but
No, no,
finally,
no. Like I am also thinking a kind of a podcast with Shiva on during
yeah,
the startup, but it's like another kind of topic. But Shiva, can you give a small intro, because like those who are active in community, they pretty much know you, but those who are joining in community and they are just like a beginner in open source. So can you give a small intro from your end? Yeah.
sure. So a very quick intro. I graduated last year from my undergrad degree in computer science from Maharaja Agricultural Institute of Technology. It's in Delhi, and I started my open source journey in 2019, quite late. That is probably the year 2019 was the year where I really just went into communities and open source. Started my contributions to Fossacia, specifically to the SUSI AI project. From there, went on to become a regular contributor for TensorFlow, and a lot of my contributions to open source have been related to a lot of machine learning based projects, including TensorFlow, MediaPipe, and even I got a chance to be a mentor for Jenkins last year for building the first ever machine learning plugin for Jenkins, and that is what I'm going to be talking about today as well. So apart from that, yeah, I mean, I've also been involved with CNCF, particularly with the service mesh community with Layer 5. But yeah, apart from that, I really love to take part in hackathons as any kind of a role, really. And yeah, those are some of the things that I am really passionate about. Apart from that, I do have like 1.5 years of professional experience as a software engineer. Yeah, so that's pretty much it.
Yeah, like it's always overwhelming to like got something like that from Shiva, and he's always been a mentor for me. But it doesn't take much time. I just bring the slides on the stage, and yeah, so it's on you, and I'm going backstage, and I know Shiva will kill on this. So bye, Shiva. Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right. So first of all, again, thank you so much for everyone who is joining into this live chat. Today we are all going to be talking about Jenkins. So first of all, huge shout out to Karthike and the OpenCo community for hosting this huge event. 15 days of amazing events related to different kind of open source organizations related like TensorFlow. So of course, thank you so much again, Karthike, for inviting over. And it's really important to give the students an insight on really large projects and being able to tell them about these projects, because a lot of time there's a certain fear amongst, especially amongst students or new beginners, that how can they get started with relatively large projects, right? And today we are going to be talking about one such kind of a project, and that is Jenkins. So we'll be going over what exactly is Jenkins, how can one contribute, right? We'll be going over all of that. So a very quick introduction. Again, I mean, I've already given, but if you want to also connect with me, you can connect with me on my GitHub, on my Twitter. But I was a Google Sum of Code mentor for Jenkins in 2020 for the machine learning plugin, and I can briefly talk about that particular plugin as well. But of course, today's session is really on what exactly is Jenkins, how can you get started by using Jenkins in your projects, and how can you contribute as a newcomer, or let's say as a student. So that's all we are going to be covering in today's session. And of course, if anyone has any particular questions, feel free to ask any questions. I'll be more than happy to take up any of your questions today for today's sessions, right? So without wasting any further time, let's get quickly started with what exactly is Jenkins. So Jenkins has a bit of a persona, and wherever you see Jenkins, you'll find the mascot for Jenkins. I like to sort of look at this mascot as an English man wearing a suit with a bow tie and having like this kind of a really classical outfit to it, right? And that is what really also comes in when we talk about the actual Jenkins, that it is a huge project, and it is one of the most, you could say, next to Kubernetes as one of the most you know, contributed projects, or most number of contributions that come from external developers who are contributing to open source projects. That is actually one of those projects, that is Jenkins, right? So it has its own persona, and of course, at its core, it is an automation server and framework. And of course, we will be talking about what exactly does this mean when we talk about how does Jenkins work internally, right? We'll be talking about all of that. But it is an automation server framework. It is a really popular CI/CD tool. It is completely open sourced, and of course, it has a really large community. And in order to make the lives of people better, there are more than 1700 plugins, and we'll be talking about what exactly are these plugins and how do they work. So first, coming on to the automation server and framework, right? And talking about, let's say, CI/CD. So if we sort of understand what exactly is CI/CD, right? So it's continuous integration and continuous delivery, right? So those are the two main things that we're talking about. So whenever we're talking about continuous integration, what exactly is that? So what continuous integration means is that whenever, let's say, you're working on a project and you let's say push some new changes to your project, right? So what would happen is that, let's say, if you have a project that is deployed or hosted somewhere, first, before deploying that project, there will be a number of steps that you will actually involve while basically before deploying. And that would include, like, let's say if you have, like, let's say, an Android application, so you make some changes. Then what happens is that there is a build of your uh, software or of your project that is created. What exactly is a build? A build is essentially a compiled target that your source code is compiled into, and you get the end result. And of course, what you would also want to ideally do is test out the changes that you have made, right? So you wouldn't want to just push any kind of changes and let it actually be available in the the deployment, or like in the live deployment, because a lot of time what can happen is that, let's say, the changes that you might have made might actually make your system unstable. There could be something rest from your system that might stop working. So we'll be having different kind of frameworks with respect to testing. So it could be like unit testing, right? It could be integration testing, regression testing, all of those different testing. And using popular testing frameworks will be something that you would want to do before you're sure that, yes, now my code is ready to get into the deployment stage. So essentially, that what is really when we're talking about from a perspective of what exactly is happening inside of the CI flow, right? When we are talking what exactly is a CI flow, that is what is happening. That the three steps that are sort of the prominent steps are that you are going to be first pushing your code, right? Essentially, you're pushing your code. And, or you could say the other way, if you're using, let's say, some kind of a version control system, is that you're committing your code, right? So you make some changes, you commit the code, then you make a build of that code and you test it, right? And that's what is the main thing with relation to the CI workflow, right? And the delivery is basically then creating a staging environment, and then finally pushing your change to deployment, right? So that's what essentially is with respect to the CI/CD. To just for those who might not be completely aware of what exactly is CI/CD, right? So Jenkins is sort of helping in all of these different steps, and you can use Jenkins as a really popular framework. Now, there are some other tools as well, Circle CI, then Travis, which are there. But of course, Jenkins is really popular for a lot of different use cases, a lot of industrial use cases, because it is a really mature framework at this point of time. And it can help you do all of these different tasks, end-to-end tasks, from creating your build to testing it out to seeing the results of the build that you generate, and then using that information to finally deploy your changes, right? So that is what makes Jenkins a really popular and a very mature tool to use. And essentially, at its core, Jenkins is an automation tool, right? So there are more than 1700 plugins. Now these plugins are created as the base of Jenkins, and you can actually use these plugins for various different kind of things. So for example, let's say you have like, let's say, a Docker image, right? and you want to, let's say, test out, or you want to simply download that image and test it out on your system. And let's say you make certain changes to your code, so you want an automated build or like creation of the latest Docker image. That is something that you can easily automate with the help of Jenkins, right? Another example could be that, let's say, you have an EC2 server. So you have a Python server, a Django based server that is hosted on EC2. So let's say you push a commit to GitHub, right, on a particular branch. You can use Jenkins to automatically push that code to the latest, to, let's say, an EC2 server that is hosted on AWS, directly using a build. So it will basically, what it will do is that when you create a commit on GitHub, it will trigger a build, and the Jenkins automation will use that build to actually also then push it further to the EC2 service, or to the EC2 server on your AWS. So all these different kind of automation things, and of course these are just two of the examples, but you can see from this particular diagram, right, that whether it is with respect to the code, that is when you're actually writing some kind of code and you're working with version control systems, or you're working with GitHub, you'll find the use of Jenkins over there. Or let's say when you're creating some kind of a build, now the builds could be like, like a Maven build, when you're like, let's say, creating a Java based project, Gradle for, let's say, Android, Docker images, right, Ansible for server deployment, or let's say, if you're even having something like CMake, or for that matter, like in machine learning today, we're using a lot, and especially like for frameworks like TensorFlow or MediaPipe, we are using specific builds as well that are used. So all of that can be automated with the help of Jenkins. And let's say then coming to the testing, right, and scanning our code. So all of that can also be done with the help of Jenkins, like the automation of for that, and basically creating a new release for your project, and then finally also being able to deploy it to Open Shift from Red Hat, sorry, and JBoss, right? All of that can be handled with the help of Jenkins, right? So it helps you to sort of automate your end-to-end workflow, or sort of from the stage where you commit your push, right, your changes, all the way till the deployment stages, right? End-to-end CI/CD pipelines are supported today by Jenkins, and that is why it sort of makes it such an incredible tool. And now talking about it like a typical Jenkins pipeline, right? How does like the pipeline sort of understand? So essentially, your first step is to get your source. So this could be like, let's say, version control system. This could be some kind of a repository which has your code, right, or your source. Then you prepare the relevant environment that your source code will be used into. So it could be some kind of environment variables, right? That is what you have to do. Then of course, the Jenkins server, or like, let's say, if you talk about any kind of a Jenkins plugin, it will essentially then start to create a build of the project, or of whatever source code that you're giving to it. It will analyze it based on certain conditions, and let's say if you have some test scripts written, you can also test that. And finally, once it has successfully built, it has passed all the different test cases, you can also publish certain reports. These reports could be showing you the status of the deployment, whether there was some kind of an error coming in, or let's say how much time it actually took for the build to take place. And you could also use it to deploy certain artifacts. So for example, let's say you were generating some kind of reports, that could be an HTML file, or it could be some kind of a graph. You can actually do and actually deploy and publish those kind of reports as well, right? So that is also something that is taken into consideration, and that is sort of supported by Jenkins, right? And finally, you can also notify, so you can send notifications whenever a successful build has been made. So you can send alert notifications, SMS notification, email notification, alerts to the users who are a part of the Jenkins pipeline, who are sort of creating these pipelines. So it sort of helps you to create this entire end-to-end workflow for any kind of push that you're making to certain projects. So that's sort of the typical Jenkins pipeline of how it actually looks. I'll be showing you a demo also of how basically we configure any kind of a new Jenkins project that we are creating. So I'll show you how that sort of end-to-end process works, and how the live deployment and the build actually looks like. But of course, I mean, Jenkins is a really popular project, and just in 2019, you can see that how many different commits and contributors, pull requests all over the world actually, were there. More than 111 countries were contributing to the Jenkins project, right? Now, of course, and in terms of the contributions, right, it's right next to Kubernetes, which is, of course, the world's largest, one of the world's largest open source projects, and a lot of contributors are there contributing to Kubernetes. But Jenkins is right next to it, right? And of course, with that, there are a lot of other such kind of projects that are also there. And of course, now coming to the most important aspect of what exactly is happening under the hood with Jenkins, right? So we are going to be talking about that. So just to get to know a bit more under the hood, that also means basically how, like, what are the technology stack, right? Because a lot of times there is a common question by people, like, what exactly is happening, or like what are some of the languages that are there. Because a lot of time what happens is that people like they get confused, or they get a little worried, like if they are not matching with the tech stacks, right? So the first thing that, or to also first understand that what exactly is really happening under the hood, the first thing that is, you're like making some kind of checks and you're creating a commit, right? So that is the first step. And the second is that whenever you have, like, let's say any kind of a source code that has been changed, Jenkins is able to fetch that changed source code, and then there are certain tests that are performed on these source code changes that you have made, right? And finally, like, if the test cases passes, there will be a dashboard where you can see the results, and you would be notified of the changes. And like, let's say if there has been a successful build, if like the test cases have passed successfully, so that is something that you would actually see happening with Jenkins, right? So essentially that is what we are sort of looking at with respect to this, right? So let me quickly also share my screen to just showcase the other different kinds of the repositories as well. So before we move on to like some of the popular languages on which Jenkins is being used, I'll quickly just stop sharing, and I'll quickly share my screen again. So let me see. Let me bring this back. All right. Let me know if my screen is visible. All right. Great. So basically, I'll just move out of this, and we can go quickly to the Jenkins organization, right? So there is, of course, since it's an open source tool, there is the Jenkins, GitHub repository, GitHub organization that you can see over here. Of course, you'll find a lot of different projects, and of course, since Jenkins is really popular, you'll find different kind of plugins, and you'll find plugins for different kinds of tools and services, like, let's say, a Kubernetes plugin, email plugin. And I mean, this is just to show the some of these, right? And of course, the different kind of languages, will be moving on to the languages also very soon. But of course, the most of the plugins that you'll find, and the actual source code for Jenkins automation server itself, is something that you can find on Jenkins CI/Jenkins. And this is pretty much the source. And just something that I probably didn't cover earlier on is that the tool itself, right? The tool itself is actually built on Java, right? So Java is the main programming language using which the tool of, like, or sort of the Jenkins tool itself has been built on. Just something to keep in mind. But of course, there are some other repositories as well. So the Jenkins infra, sort of the organization, is mainly with respect to the infrastructure. So whether you're creating, like, let's say, a Jenkins for for Kubernetes based or for Docker based, all of that is sort of happening over here inside of the infra. So if you want to look at specifically the plugins, you can go ahead and also visit those. I'll be also sharing links for all of these different things as well, and I'll share the basically this slides as well. And of course, these are some of the key repositories. The Jenkins.io is the one that if you want to get started, specifically, for knowing more about Jenkins, right, you can definitely visit this as well. And you'll also find a lot of documentation for how to get started, how to basically install Jenkins, and let's say how to create your first ever pipeline, or let's say how to create your first ever build. So you'll find all those information on Jenkins.io. Right. Now, coming back to the presentation and talking more about the tech stack, right? So, as of now, there are more than 2,300 repositories that do include more than 1,700 plugins as well, right? And the top languages that are there include Java, JavaScript, Groovy, Golang, Ruby. So, it's not that if you only know Java, then you can contribute to Jenkins. You can contribute to the different kinds of other projects, including, like, let's say Jenkins, the documentation, right, that has been there, right? So it's based on Groovy or JavaScript. Or you could also collaborate and actually work on the different kind of Jenkins plugins, and those plugins have been built using different those have support for different kind of languages as well. And then of course it's not really platform specific, it's platform agnostic, because you do have support for all the different kind of major operating systems, and even VMs, or something like Docker and Kubernetes, right? And that's something that makes Jenkins really sort of versatile in terms of what kind of things do you actually want to contribute to, right? So that is what makes Jenkins really useful for beginners, for advanced contributors, or if you have like love for a particular technology, you can always share that. And of course, this is a really important slide that I just want to share with everyone, and this is sort of to talk about how can you actually contribute to Jenkins, right? And this is by Mark Waite and Oleg, who is currently sort of a maintainer in Jenkins and also an org admin. And Mark Waite is also one of the org admins at Jenkins. So they created this really beautifully drafted slide, and it sort of talks about how can you get started with Jenkins, and why the Jenkins project specifically is a good way to begin your open source contributions, right? So we'll be talking all about that. So the first thing is that, like other open source projects, Jenkins supports not only standard software development and like just using, like, let's say one particular language. It has support for multiple languages. There is a huge documentation that is actually there that you can actually contribute to, right? So essentially, whatever you are using, whatever different kind of tools you're using, you can actually integrate Jenkins somewhere in that, right? So that is what makes Jenkins really versatile, and really something that you can definitely contribute to, because you'll find its use case or a reference to it somewhere in your day-to-day work, right? And now, of course, where exactly you can help it, you can help with the actual code. I just showed you the GitHub repositories for this. You can help with the documentation. That is always helping out. Then writing test cases, because as we are looking at Jenkins as this automation tool, testing itself is a really important aspect. But of course, you can also help with the outreach, like I am doing over here, whether it's like helping more and more students, more and more people get introduced to Jenkins, helping them out, mentoring them, right? Or even doing, like, let's say, translations of the documentation of the workflows, because as we saw that Jenkins is widespread in more than 100 plus countries, right? And also, like, let's say, answering the user-based questions on the different kind of forums on GitHub chat, and that is something that you can do with Jenkins. So it's really not just about code contributions. There are a lot of other non-code related contributions that still count as technical contributions that you're making, but that's what really makes it versatile, that whatever is your passion, you can choose to sort of work in that. And so this is essentially, or honestly, common across all the different kinds of open source projects that we have, right? And of course, uh, pull requests, don't worry about it, right? Your first ever pull request, even if it's like a one line change, if it does make sense, that contribution does count, right? So never sort of feel that, okay, I'm not able to make a contribution, this problem, this sounds too difficult for me to handle, right? Don't let those kind of thoughts overpower you. It's really important that you make a contribution first, and of course, the more you make, like the more contributions you make, the better you get comfortable with the exact code base. And of course, let's say if you want to code, you can visit all these different kinds of organizations and repositories, and you can also, visit plugins as well. And I'll be coming to the Jenkins events where they host every year, specifically Hacktoberfest within Jenkins and the CDF. I'll be talking about the CDF as well in a while. But of course, these are the specific areas where you can contribute to, you can maintain, like you can work on the Jenkins core, the actual automation server, or with the plugins as well, right? So that is something that you can do as well. And of course, if you want to get started with, let's say, contributing to the official Jenkins project, again, as you might have probably come across as a good way to get started, is that before, like, diving into the code base, there are three essential things that you should always do. Go through the readme, go through the contributing guide if there is, like, there, like it could be a contributing.md, it could be some kind of other file. And the third one is essentially that always, you could always start off with beginner friendly issues, right, or good first issues, right? You, like, different kind of repositories have that effect differently, but this is something, this is to keep in mind when you're talking about the Jenkins, like if you want to contribute to Jenkins code, right? So there will be certain expectations that will be used, but of course, I hope this gives a brief sense, right, so that you do follow the best practices when it comes to, contributing. So that's something to keep in mind. And of course, you can also get started with plugins, right? Because the Jenkins plugins are a really important way to sort of, utilize the power of Jenkins and go ahead and be able to actually utilize it with various different kinds of tools, right? So it could be some kind of version control system based tools, some kind of automation deployment tools, and that's really what makes the plugins so versatile, right? And you can visit jenkins.io/doc/developer/tutorial and move to the plugin tutorial part, right? You'll find the tutorial over there. So essentially, that is what is, the basically the Jenkins plugins, and you'll find a lot of different plugins that are actually there. There are new plugins being added every year, right? Every month. So like these help. So in an analogy, you could say that yes, I mean, like how NPM is to, node-based projects, Jenkins plugins is like really helpful to sort of use these directly in your workflows, because all the internal code is already written. You just have to run these honestly. So I hope this makes sense to everyone. And of course, you can also contribute with JavaScript, right? So there are certain plugins that have been built using JavaScript or as the base, and the plugins website is entirely based in JavaScript, so you can always contribute to the website as well. And you can also, contribute to Golang. So like Golang is specifically used for Jenkins X. You could think about Jenkins X as a more advanced, it's not like directly related to Jenkins, or like not directly Jenkins, but there are some more sort of more features that are added to Jenkins X, and you can find that in Golang, right? You can also look at that. And of course, there are a lot of different other kind of programming languages that you can use. You can just have to reach out to the maintainers to help you understand, right? And of course, once this is done, right, what we are also looking at is that you can join the Gitter chat specifically for the Hacktoberfest, because this is where you'll find a lot of other relevant links to get, let's say, probably get started with these programming languages, or let's say get started with like actual contributions that you're making. I hope that makes sense to everyone. And of course, if you also want to write, you can get started by writing as a blogger with Jenkins. So you can work on user documentation, developer documentation, API documentation, and you can also join the special interest group specifically for the docs for Jenkins by going to https://jenkins.io/6/docs. You can also visit that for for basically writing. And you can also write user documentation that you will find how can the users get it easier for how it becomes easier for users to basically be able to utilize Jenkins. right? That's something to sort of also keep in mind. So that's also something that you can explore, right? And of course you'll find like specific solutions to be able to run Jenkins in Android, in Docker, Python, right? And that just shows like how important it is to write proper user documentation, right? And of course how can you write such kind of documentation where it actually helping the developers, right? So we want to create developer specific content. So how can you write such kind of content that is more developer friendly, developer focused, right? So that's also something that you can contribute to. And of course, I mean, there are some localizations that also you find. And of course, if you also want to test, you can go ahead and just go to the ci.jenkins.io. That is mainly with respect to the integrations of the different kind of pull requests that you can actually interactively test. You can write unit test, integration test, regression tests, and all, and you can also contribute in that way, right? And of course, you can also test like the Jenkins plugins. All the links for these I'll be sharing inside of the chat. And of course that's not really it, right? Of course these might have probably sounded all of these might have sounded a bit code related, but of course you can always create such kind of amazing memes or like designs as well for the community, right? You can collaborate to actually create all of this. You'll find like the specific links for these as well. And of course, I mean, currently with the Hacktoberfest, there's an online meetup that is a sort of an event that Jenkins has opened up, and there are a lot of different beginner-friendly issues that have been labeled as like Hacktoberfest ones. So you can definitely go ahead and contribute to those particular projects as well. And I'll be quickly also giving a demo on how does Jenkins look. But before that, we'll discover a brief on this. So before we actually go ahead and talk about contributing, how can you actually contribute? I'd like to just give a very quick demonstration also of how basically Jenkins work. For that, I will just go back and I will go to my localhost. So for that, I'll just go to localhost 8080. This is where basically my Jenkins server is currently running. So I'll just quickly log in. Right. So as soon as I log in, you will welcomed to the dashboard. Now, keep in mind that there are certain things that are required to install Jenkins. So you do need an active version of working, like an actively running Java. So you have to install Java. So for Mac users, you can follow along a very simple tutorial that you just have to install Brew. Using Brew, you can install Java. Once Java is installed, you just have to install Jenkins and just set up a few quick things that you have to set up before you can start off with this process, right? So essentially what we are trying to do over here is that within this dashboard you can basically create new pipelines. You can retest old pipelines. You can do things like, and so let's say for that matter we can have even new plugin supports that it can be added and can be used specifically for that. You can generate reports and all of this can happen on the Jenkins dashboard. So as a test, basically I had created a sample build, right? And I called it like test, and as you can see that it actually created the build and it was successfully able to use or sort of look at the, so I can look at the changes that have been made. I can look at the status, right? And you can see that with respect to the status, right? What you can see over here is like where exactly is the status, like whether the build was successfully completed or not, or whether there are some anomalies that might have come up. So all those will be also shared over here. But yeah, apart from that, essentially what we are sort of looking for is that how can whenever, like let's say some kind of a build that you're making, how can you notify? So you can even set up tools or tool chains for that to actually send you a notification that hey, there's a successful build for the code changes that you have made using Jenkins, right? So that is also something that you can have a look at. And of course, I mean, for example, this one, if I talk about the one like that is a successful build, you can see the logs for the repository for which I looked at. So this is like the console log, and you can see that it actually did finish with a success. So it did create a it did create basically the you could say the build was successful, right? And of course the changes and the status is something that you can sort of look at for all the different kinds of projects. So let's say if I want to go ahead and if I go back to the dashboard, and let's say I want to now create a new task, or I want to create a new build. So I can just click on a plus sign. I can go, let's say, to this new item, and over here in the new item, let's say I'll give the demonstration as a demo of Jenkins, right? And then it allows me to choose between all these different types of ways in which we'll interact. So basically, the freestyle project is the most popular one, right? So what it allows you to do is it allows you to check real-time feedback, and of course, once, let's say, in that case, what we are doing now is that let's say if you want to just create like a build, and then if, let's say, the build is successful, you want to generate some kind of artifacts or some kind of reports, everything can be handled very easily with the freestyle project. So I'll just quickly go ahead and select the freestyle project, right? And I can click on next, and then you have to basically fill a lot of these other different things. So this sort of gives you the entire configuration menu. So that includes basically the, okay, what is the description for the build that you want to create, right? And then basically you have places for the source code management, whether it's being handled on Git or it's being handled somewhere else, right? And of course, apart from that, we are also like building the different kind of triggers, right? And basically these can be used to sort of let you know that, okay, there could be, let's say that there's a GitHub hook, right, that triggers, let's say, an automatic build to EC2. Like, let's say if there is a certain code that has been pushed to a particular system, right? So just as an example, let's say that, okay, the user or whosoever is creating this Jenkins build, they want to add certain triggers in their build, right, that can give them alert, right, and all of that. So that is also something that you can do with this code. But yeah, in a sense, what is the main idea behind filling all of this is that, of course, first you'll just provide like a small description about what you're building, right? Then you'll mention, okay, like whether it is like source code is like, let's say, whether it's you're using none, or let's say you're using Git. And basically these are some of the things that will be super important when we are also building these, right? So you have to provide triggers, you have to provide, let's say, some kind of environment variable that might be required to use in the case it's required to use, right? And of course then you can also go back to, let's say, general, and you can find basically all the other different things that you have to define, right, over here in the general. And yeah, I mean, like, once you are done, or you have gone through all these different like sort of lines, or basically you have gone through each one of these major sections that might be relevant for you, you can just go ahead and essentially just go ahead and basically you have understood everything is done, you can just go ahead and save it, right? And you can see how basically that build process actually takes place. So of course there are a lot of different kind of configurations to sort of target all of that. So for now, let's say that we treat this as, let's say, a GitHub project, right? And I can give, like, let's say like, let's say this is okay. So for example, this is my GitHub repository that I'm giving. So the source code management be Git, right? And I can give the remote URL repository, right? And the branch that I want to specifically merge is the master branch, right? That is something that we can look at, and you can add that branch. And of course, the most important thing to keep in mind is that essentially once all this has been made, it's still kept, right? But of course it's not like, for example, let's say if you want to keep a track of the history, you want to keep track of like if there were actually some errors or break that are actually coming in, how were those actually coming in, so you can keep a track of all of that. So I can just go ahead and then apply and click on apply if there's nothing else I want to go ahead and use. So basically this is now used, right? And now what you'll see is that, okay, once I apply this and I click on save, right, So if I go back to the dashboard, you'll find that now there is another build that is actually taking place, and that is the demo Jenkins one, right? So essentially, you can also then create your own builds. Freestyle is definitely the most popular one out there, but you'll also find like similar ones for calendar, right? Because basically what we need to sort of do is that we want sort of more and more testing as well. We want more sort of documentation to be had. So of course, like, automation of all of this will be important, but of course there are certain other things to also keep in mind. So let's try to quickly refresh and see if the build was successfully made or not. So it will probably get reflected soon enough. If I click on the demo Jenkins and I look at let's say it could be the build, right? So we can look at the build right now. So let's try to actually build and see if, like, the build actually takes place. So you can see that the build has started, and you can see that the build was successfully done. That means the like, there are no errors that actually came in. So if there are some build errors, you might have to probably change your code base a little, right? So essentially that is what you see in the output. So I hope this makes sense to everyone. And of course, I mean, once, let's say, you have gone through this entire process, right, then what you can do is that basically what we are sort of looking at is that, okay, once you see that, okay, all the tests have passed, all the different kinds of games, right, all of that has passed, what would be, like, the next steps, right? Whether to generate a report out of it, right, or actually use it for a production based system with one of the plugins, right, or using or building something from the core Jenkins project that has been there, right? So those are the different kind of things that you can probably think about and actually start using it, right, and include it within your entire pipeline. I hope it makes sense. And of course, at any point of time, if anyone has any questions, feel free to sort of let me know. I'll be more than happy to take up any questions if anyone has. But so far, I was just giving a brief demonstration of how does the Jenkins platform actually look like.
Cool, Shivay. That's a great one. And
I have a few other slides left, so I can probably quickly cover those and we can pick up questions. That's fine.
sure, sure, sure. I'm just adding the again to the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, essentially that is how you'll find the different kind of builds that you have made, all your build histories, everything will come over here, right? And so yeah, basically that is how you can also get started by contributing to Jenkins, right? And of course, that, as I mentioned, that there are not just really all of these, but there's a lot of different kinds of activities to basically engage with. You can basically do the role of meeting other users to, let's say, have outreach. You can do code, and you can help people, using the tag, and then you can review, you can design, you can document. Everything will help. Right. So for this, like, you can go to basically jenkins.io/participate, and it will give you the options, right? And of course, the pull request, as we discussed briefly, was we're not really looking at like a specific uh, issue, right? What we are sort of looking more into is like whether the uh, code, or like, let's say, the code, it has like proper value, or like, let's say, the documentation is properly done, the blog posts have been properly written, there's no plagiarism, right? That is when the pull request counts, right? Something to keep in mind. And of course, you can always get started by taking part in the getting started issues. So you'll find basically this particular slide that sort of has a lot of different newbie or beginner friendly issues in Jira, right? So that's something that you can probably also keep in mind. And of course, with respect to like the if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the mentors and maintainers of the project on the Jenkins CI/new contributors, which is basically the Slack, right? So that is what we have basically with the getting started. And of course, I mean, like, if you want to know more about Jenkins, you can obviously like visit us. And of course, like as I've mentioned, that Jenkins is really deep into being able to create programs especially for students, right? So it takes part in a lot of different kinds of programs like Google Son of Code, Google Season of Docs, right? That is for documentation, LFX mentorship, then some online hackathons, and even for Hacktoberfest for that matter, right? So you can go to this particular link called Jenkins /io / advocacy and outreach, and especially to the reach programs, right? So you can reach to all these different kinds of programs for specific contributions that they would want to make. And of course, just talking briefly about the Jenkins in Google School of Code, right? So specifically for the stats of 2020, there were probably around 10 different project ideas, right? And you can look at this particular project. But essentially, Jenkins was merged under, you could say, the CDF, which is basically the Continuous Delivery Foundation, right? So basically, that is, you could probably think of it as, what would be the correct way to sort of, you could probably think of it as like Jenkins was officially adopted by the CDF, and currently when you talk about like laptop, or it could be any kind of system, right? So yeah, this is like the one that you can keep in mind. And yeah, I mean, apart from that, it is really great to be able to collaborate with the students and watch them build projects really quickly. And of course, after that, like, to just sort of define like what exactly are goals. So specifically with this one is to be able to find out like relevant users who might be sort of looking, so what you could do this is that basically when you are looking at the GSoC experience, right? What really matters is that you should have quality in the pull request, and you should not go for quantity, right? That is the number one thing that you have to keep in mind. And there are of course different kinds of project types as well, different projects where you might have to combine, let's say, some other external libraries or external service providers, is something that you can probably look at. So that's something just to keep in mind. All right. And of course, what is offered by Jenkins is the strong community bonding of large set of developers all around the world. You get experienced mentors who can help guide you and can help you create online, like let's say, some kind of a demo, right? And you can use that. So I mean, those are some things that need to be kept in mind. And this just shows some of the highlights from the 2019 GSoC, which was organized in person, luckily, right? And of course, how to basically apply for it. You can basically reach out to the community, and you will basically get a link to the project proposal that you had shared, and that will be shared again, right? And that is basically the way to enter the CDF Foundation, right? So basically, the CDF Foundation is sort of the organization, or sort of the main organization under which Jenkins sort of is having a specific role, and there are a lot of different other non-specific, like Jenkins specific ones that are there. So I hope it makes sense to everyone. And of course, you can join like the mailing list, you can join Getter Chat, you can join basically the regular meeting calls that take place on Wednesdays, right? And of course, you can look at the project specific channels as well. So that's something that we'll have to add. I hope it makes sense, right? So basically, you'll also find like project specific channels as well. So those are some of the things that you can keep in mind. Now, apart from that, basically, just to sort of summarize what we have covered, you can go to basically the jenkins.io/participate, and in this you'll find all the different things, whether it's related to testing, actually coding, or documenting. This is probably the most important link. I'll just share this with basically with Karthike, so that he can share it with everyone, right? And of course, this is probably the most important link that you might want if you want to contribute to Jenkins. And of course, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be more than happy to take those up. I think Karthik, you're speaking on mute.
Sorry. Yeah. There is one question from Shefali, I think. So let me bring on the stage. How to create a development environment for contributing to Jenkins?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically, as I mentioned, that there are a few prerequisites that are required. So of course, you do need Java to be installed, and Maven. Of all those are different things that is great. Then you can just go, and I'll also just quickly share my screen again, if that's fine. If you can add it. So if I basically go back to Jenkins, so if I go to Jenkins.io, and if I go to, let's say, the documentation and let's say installing, so Java is definitely the prerequisite, and of course then after that you have to install Jenkins. And basically the development environment also is sort of dependent on what kind of system that you're running. So let's say if you're having a Kubernetes cluster, if you're having a Docker image, that also is supported, like being able to install Jenkins over there. So for me specifically, it is macOS. So it's relatively simple. I just have to install Brew. I have to install Java, and after that, I get commands to basically test out or basically change some code, and then of course you're able to just create it. Right, that is something really good. So of course you can install Jenkins and do that. And I hope that makes sense to everyone. So depending on your operating system, just one thing to keep in mind is that Java is absolutely necessary, and then you can just install Jenkins.
Cool. So there's not such a question, but it's like big query, I think so maybe. So it's like that, it's focus on version control and CI/CD part. So how it's different from GitHub and GitHub Action specifically, because it's kind of a
That's
same.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah, that's actually a really good question. So, see, at its core, as I mentioned, the primary difference between a version control system and the CI/CD is that with version control system, you're really just, you could say, working on the projects, right? You're sort of collaborating with others. All your different kind of code changes that you make are stored in a history, right? So you can look at what kind of code changes that you made before, right? But when it comes to CI/CD, it's all about the integration of and being able to make sure that the testing goes on well, and there's nothing that is breaking, right? There's a successful build that takes place, and then finally you go ahead and deploy it to a relevant server or somewhere else, right? So that is the primary difference. Now GitHub Actions is sort of, you could say, an alternative, but of course with the maturity of the Jenkins and the huge amount of plugins that are there inside of Jenkins, there is still like Jenkins being used. But GitHub Actions are definitely, you could say, another way through which you can sort of automate a lot of different things, right? From basically auto assigning certain things, like let's say working with GitHub issues, GitHub pull requests, right? Or let's say making sure that whenever you push some code to your GitHub, like you can create a GitHub action to perform certain tasks. It could be, let's say, release of some kind of an image, some kind of a report that you want to generate. Even that can be handled with the help of GitHub Actions. But GitHub Actions, those, like how basically the registries work, that's something that is there. But of course, in terms of the maturity and in terms of the support for different kind of large scale projects that are there specifically for the plugins, there's definitely no match right now when it comes
Cool.
to GitHub Action.
So there is one more question. This is from my side again. So you've been a part of Layer 5, which is a part of like CNCF. So again,
Yeah.
Jenkins also support DevOps services or DevOps plugins specifically. So when we say it's when we are comparing Jenkins with maybe CNCF products or CNCF projects. So what will you say? Which will better if we are going for the maybe comparison in terms of projects?
Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of hard to compare between the two because there are different use cases. So Jenkins is not sort of just limited to cloud native work environments. You can work with cloud native based systems as well and still use Jenkins. But even if you are working with simple MVC structure, you're working with monolith architectures, you can use Jenkins for automated deployments, for automated testing and all. You can do all of that, build testing, all of that can be happening with with that particular systems as well.
Cool. So those who didn't know about what is monolithic, it's like I'm just taking an example. Difference between monolithic and microservice, like that we created small services or different and just connected with them. And monolithic, it's like kind of a whole system working on the same, like all the functions are included on in a single frame, you can say. And yeah, there's no. But yeah, again, folks, I just added the links, and if you want, you can participate again for Jenkins. All the links are in the
Yeah.
description. If you
So
got some insight. Uh, Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
there is
This
a
is
Hacktoberfest meetup going on. So
yep.
let me look at
I just added the screen.
meetup,
Yeah.
yeah, by Jenkins. So this is also something that you can take part in. So I think this is the one, Hacktoberfest Jenkins. So every year Jenkins, takes part in Hacktoberfest, and it releases a lot of different types of like beginner friendly issues that you can contribute to. They host actual meetups with their maintainers, so you can get an insight on how basically these Jenkins projects are working, how to get started with Jenkins, and so you'll find all of this also there with these events. So this is also something that you can definitely attend if you're interested in contributing to Jenkins. But again, the best flexibility when it comes to contributing with Jenkins is that you're not just limited to working on the Jenkins official server that is based in Java. You can work on any of the particular, let's say, any of the particular. You could probably work on any of the particular. It could be plugins that are available in any of the languages that are available. It could be JavaScript language, Golang, right? I just showed you a few of the examples. So that is what makes Jenkins and contributing to Jenkins really versatile, right? So yeah, I just wanted to also say that.
Cool. And yeah, all the links are in the description, folks. And for the newer links, after the session in 5 minutes, I hope so, we update in the description box so you can check them out. And if you got any insight regarding this session, take a screenshot, tag Shivay, me, and we are much on active on Twitter, and like whole developer community are in the Twitter only, so you can do there that stuff. And also, this is the last session. I hope so. A series of from 3 to 15 October, I guess. You got some insight over that. We bring so different organization to help you out, and I hope so. You got great to get started with open source, because I know in every community it's like open source 101. So it's a kind of a very vague for me. It's okay for
Yeah.
beginners to get into open source 101, but in every community it seems very not over, like it's a like a underwhelming kind of thing for me. But I hope so. You got something regarding that. Okay, so there's a question from, I think, someone. What to enter in account and password section after downloading?
Sure. So whenever you are downloading Jenkins, the first thing that you have to do is when you follow the steps, there is this master password or this access key that you get. So whenever you're creating your account, you first need to enter this access key, right? This you will find basically you'll be getting a path, and you can use, let's say, the cat command to do that. So I think I might actually have this particular terminal. Let me see. So these are the steps that you can follow. So this is specifically for so basically for me, my secrets, there is a like .jenkins, that is a hidden folder. You'll find your secret, and you'll find the initial admin password. So you can use this basically to sort of basically set up the initial password. And once you have set up the initial password, then you can just set up your account. You can create your login ID, password, email address, and all to set up your dashboard.
Cool. Also, it's same like Aman. If you've been in a maybe a 30 days of cloud challenge, so if you are doing under services, so it's like a you create a SSH key kind of thing to get access out
Yeah.
of it. So it's a normal authentication, you can say. Aman is saying, can you please provide the link for that?
Sure. So I mean, you just need to go to Jenkins.io, and basically the
Yep.
installation steps. So you can just go to the installing guide and install it for the relevant system that you want to install
Yep.
it for.
Yeah, it's Aman. It's like a very let me, if you want, let me share. Like Shiva just shared just now. I'm just adding. Cool. So this is the link, folks. It's like just go through the documentation, and if you face any issue, again, you can join the community as a Jenkins community through Glitter, I think so. And like mostly they are in the Slack and Glitter, because it's like a professional end on that end. And
Yeah.
I hope there is not. Let me see one. Okay, so yeah, it's like everyone is Shiva OP. I just saw right now.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, like everyone is saying Shiva OP in chat, so that's why.
Thank you so much.
No, it's always like I also like I am want to explore Jenkins, but from your session again, because I'm writing a blog from the session that I conducted from 3 to 15 October. So folks,
Yeah, yeah,
even if you didn't join that part, I am making blogs for you. It's like a very long blog. Because it contain every session kind of thing, so do not overwhelm over that. If anyone want to like didn't get the links perfectly through maybe YouTube, and if that person is not good with maybe videos but good with blogs, want to reading blogs, it's a good thing. So I'm sharing maybe in a 1 to 2 days, but bear with me because maybe in a 1 or 2 days I am traveling, so by back to the college, that stuff. So maybe on it can happen later, but yeah, I will post in a week for sure. Cool.
yeah.
I think there is no more question for now. And yeah, folks, all the links are in the description. In just 5 minutes after the session over. And again, all the links are again. Shiva is in our Discord. And if you need any help regarding, you can like again do it publicly. Do not DM Shiva, please. And it's a very wrong aspect that any in Indian tech community is going. No, not in Indian tech community, but in general also. So yep.
Yeah.
When will you come to BIT? Bro, I am coming on 17th, I guess, maybe afternoon. So yeah, cool. Let me see. There's no question more. Okay, so it's a note from Sanskriti. The session I attended were very helpful, and I'm sure one that was amazing. Yeah, great.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ashwat. Yeah. Okay, folks, I hope so your doubts are cleared, and do join the community. Do not spam. Do add value contribution to that particular organization and project. And again, we are here to guide you. If you need any help regarding anything, join a Discord. I already created a banner for that. So if you want to join, go there and you can join over there. And yeah, we just structuring. There is a one those who are listening to us right now. We and probably on the November we are starting machine learning boot camp, and it's a like a it includes the basics of everything from research and starting how do you can start reading research paper, how you can implement that research paper. And we have a great speaker again. Shiva is one of them, so you can see on a TensorFlow end. But I am there. I am not leaking out many like other speaker, but you will love that boot camp. I'm trying my best to do more for community in machine learning, but I hope so you got something on that end. And yep, so cool. Yep, thank you, Shiva. Thank you. Yep. Okay,
Yeah,
folks, thanks for joining.
more excited.
And yes, happy Dussehra to all. I know it's a festival seasoning going on, and we have done the session, but like what we have like structured over that, and we didn't think of like I didn't even forgot about like on 15th days of Dussehra. So, but thanks for joining. And will you come on? Yeah, obviously, bro, CTC is there, so I have to come. So yeah, my exam is going on that end. But yeah, cool.
Karthik is really popular in
No,
his
I'm
school.
not popular. I'm not popular in my college. Truly, I'm popular in tech community, but I can't in popular in my college. So, okay, folks, thanks for joining, and I hope so you got insight. So, see ya, folks, on the
Thanks.
maybe next, maybe on the boot camp. So, me, Shiva, and other folks will join over there also on that end. So, see ya, folks. Bye, bye.